Hey, what's up, guys? It's David from quizhacker.net. Today we're looking at question 5 on the reading section of practice test 1 in the ACT Red Book. So this question at first blush looks pretty easy, but there's actually something about it that makes it a little bit difficult. So let's take a look at the question itself. The main point of the last paragraph is that Fran's mother believes. So look, we always want to look at the questions and make sure that there's nothing we need to translate, that there's no strange language or non-intuitive phrasing that requires us to sort of rethink the question and figure out, hey, what are we really being asked here? That's not the case with this question. This is a straightforward question. You know, what's the main point of the last paragraph? And it even gives us more than that. It starts us off, right? Well, the main point is that Fran's mother believes something, right? What is it that she believes? That's the main point. But before we get into the answer choices, I just want to remind you, how do we find a main point of a paragraph? We talked about this last week in question 4 because it asked us what the main point of the first paragraph was. So if you recall from that video, a few different ways to find the main point of a paragraph. A good idea is always to look at the first sentence, which is often the topic sentence of a paragraph. We can also look at the last sentence because that will often summarize the paragraph. And then we're also going to look for any ideas that are repeated. Those are all hints about the main point. Now, none of those things are 100% reliable, but they're always things we want to take a look at in trying to find the main point of a paragraph. Another thing I want to talk about before we get into the answer choices, 3 of which, as we know, are distractors, is that we always want to get an idea of the answer in our heads first before we start looking at the distractors. Why? Well, because the distractors are engineered, cleverly engineered usually, to distract us, to throw us off. And before subjecting ourselves to their distracting influence, we want to have some idea what we're looking for in the right answer. So again, the question, main point of the paragraph, the last paragraph, is that Fran's mother believes. All right, looking at the first sentence of the last paragraph, Fran's mother says to Fran, maybe you're worried she, meaning Linda Rose, she'll be disappointed in you. Let's look at the last sentence. You're her flesh and blood mother. She's again talking to Fran. And that's enough. That's all it'll take. So actually the last 2 sentences. So now that we have a basic idea of what we're looking for, that is, you know, Fran's mother believes that maybe Fran's worrying about disappointing Linda Rose, and Fran's mother believes that because Fran's her flesh and blood mother, that'll be enough for Linda Rose. We're looking for an answer choice that says something like that. Now let's look at the answer choices. A, Linda Rose has few illusions about Fran. So does Fran's mother believe that? Well, this one looks not crazy because, look, Fran's mother is saying, you're worried that Linda Rose, perhaps you're worried that Linda Rose will be disappointed in you. Hey, you shouldn't worry about that. Well, that could be because, you know, Linda Rose doesn't have these fantasies about the perfect mom that maybe Fran is concerned that Linda Rose has. In that case, Fran would have no real reason for worry, right? So this sort of fits in with the idea. So let's set that off to the side. We're going to put a star next to it or an arrow to indicate this is a possibility. B, Linda Rose might cause trouble or ask for money. There's nothing even close to that. This is what I call an answer choice from Mars, right? It's completely foreign. It's totally irrelevant, right? So if you think otherwise, if you think there's support for B, put it in the comments and I'll respond to it. All right. C, Fran shouldn't worry about disappointing Linda Rose. Okay, well, that's definitely a possibility, right? That's sort of what we said we saw as the main point from reading the first sentence and the last sentence. So we're putting a star, an arrow next to that. D, Fran shouldn't write to Linda Rose until Fran is emotionally prepared. Okay, so this is, again, it's not quite as crazy as B, but I just don't see anything like this in the paragraph. So I think that one's easy to rule out. Again, as always, if you think there's support, you know, if you're like, no way, it's totally D. How can you not see that line 6 or whatever, you know, says the same thing as D? Put it in the comments. I'll respond and explain why that's not the case. So we're down to, A and C, right? A says Linda Rose has few illusions about Fran. C says Fran shouldn't worry about disappointing Linda Rose. Well, it's true, right, that if Linda Rose didn't have illusions about Fran, if Linda Rose didn't have all of these fantasies about Fran being, what does it say in the paragraph, Grace Kelly or Margaret Mead, then Fran wouldn't have to worry about disappointing her, right? I mean, if someone's not expecting you to be totally, totally awesome, and then it turns out you're not totally, totally awesome, you're not going to disappoint them. Fran's mom never says that, right? All Fran's mom says is, you shouldn't worry because you're her flesh and blood mom, and that will be enough. For all we know from the passage, Linda Rose does have some crazy fantasy about Fran. But what all Fran's mom says is, even if that's the case, she's still not going to be disappointed in you because bottom line, you're her mom, and that'll be enough, right? Okay, so this is a common characteristic of distractors, of incorrect answers, that they will be overly narrow. The passage says that Fran should not worry because she's Linda Rose's mother, and that's it. It doesn't get any more specific than that. So that's it for this one. If you have questions, as always, post them and I will respond. I post new videos every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, so subscribe so you don't miss out. See you next time.